So we record this Sunday afternoon, and there are games being played right now. But after today, there'll be 7 days left, and for I guess most of the teams, I think there's only 7 games at the most. Maybe
Right.
I don't think there's any
That's
double
the most
headers.
there could be.
Well, there could be a double header in there for a makeup
think
game
there's-
at this time.
I
I don't think there is. And there's some wild end of the season series which we'll discuss.
There's a lot of divisional series being played that are going to have impacts on final races.
Yes,
I think is very interesting.
It's funny because people were talking about the playoff teams, and what if there were? Well, I'm making the suggestion, but there's too many. Maybe we should have a little bit less. But I don't really know how you can go from either 12 to 8, right, in each league.
Well, you just cut out the extra 2 wild cards.
You come out 2 more wild cards. And so would that be better? Would an 18 because right now the point I'm making is it's so exciting having all these teams in it that it kind of feels kind of cool that there's teams that aren't going to make it who are still fighting for it right now.
Yeah, exactly. And having these exciting races coming down the pipeline, I think is what's going to be making, because you've got the AL West race, which is really exciting, and then you've got the race for the second and third spot in the National League Wild Card, which is really exciting as well. And I think both of those are going to kind of come down to who plays the best in this last week.
Yeah. It's almost like I think the Rangers and the Mariners play 7 times here in the end of the season, and that's like a playoff series before the playoffs. Right, yeah. Exactly. So, and the Rangers have the lead now, and the Mariners have not had a good weekend so far, as we hear on Sunday. They'll try to get the last game, salvage a game of the series tonight. But let's talk a little about the Rays, and I think we've been a little hard on them for not making a deal and getting a stadium together. That whole management. And so they finally come up with a stadium, and it's really interesting because they came up with a domed stadium that's not retractable, and I assume that makes it more affordable than anything else. Artificial turf, which is sort of like a Rays thing now. That's what they are.
They're keeping the vibe of the current stadium, but it's just going to be a new place because the Trop isn't the most pleasant place to watch.
And it hasn't been
game.
for a long time. And it'll be built right next door to where the Trop is now. So good for them. Only 30,000 seats, and we know today when they build stadiums, it's about luxury boxes and fewer seats seem to be the way people are going.
Right. Less seats to deliver a higher overall quality viewing experience rather than having every petty but packed in these giant mega stadiums that eventually don't quite sell out.
I still think that having 50, 60,000 people there for a baseball game is exciting, and when you have a capacity of 30, it's not exactly the same.
Right, but the problem is that you only get those max capacity of 50 or 60,000 when the team's really good, or when you live in New York.
Well,
if you built the 30,000 seat if you built a 60,000 seat in St. Pete and the Rays were bad for a couple of years, then you have a stadium that's half empty every single week.
Didn't I say that on August 5th, the major leagues averaged 38,000 attendance across baseball? So that's averaging more than the capacity of the stadium. It's fine. Look, they're building the amount of seats that work for the situation, and good for the Rays, and good that they're going to stay in St. Pete, because now that allows expansion to be looked at, right? Once the A's get their situation, it looks like they're going to go to Vegas. Now we can talk about Montreal. We can talk about Nashville, other places that are looking for teams. But yeah, you talked about clinching last week, and so you were right. Yeah. The Twins clinched. Well, actually, you weren't completely right, because the Brewers, I think they're dormy, as we say in golf. Like, they can't lose it, but they need to win one more to clinch. They have a wild card now. They don't have the division yet, so
they're going to clinch.
They're going to clinch.
The only way is they have to lose out, and the Cubs have to win out.
And the AL West, we'll talk about that in a little bit. And Mookie Betts actually came up with a very interesting stat I'd never seen before this week. He, as a leadoff hitter, has 105 RBIs, which is the most RBIs for a player in the leadoff spot in the history of Major League Baseball.
That's pretty impressive.
Right. He beat Charlie Blackmon of the Rockies, who had, I think, 103 in 2017. And I immediately thought, well, doesn't Schwarber bat leadoff? And when I went back and looked at the game logs this year, there was a long time that Schwarber didn't bat leadoff for them this year.
So that would totally
Bryson Stott
that'll impact
Trey Turner. They tried Trey Turner at the top of the lineup. So that's kind of so great job by Mookie Betts, who's having an amazing season and who won't win the MVP.
No, because it's going to be because Acuna and him got close, and then Acuna had a great sort of run here in the middle of September that sort of thoroughly locked him in as MVP, I like to think.
And another thing that caught my eye this week is that I forget who wrote about it. I think it was Joe Posnanski, about Schwarber and Muncy both having over 100 RBIs, but Schwarber's hitting 198 here on Sunday, and Muncy 213. And so we're accepting of these guys with really low averages, because the other things those guys do, and their ops plus is something like 120 to 123, which is
but on the same hand, Schwarber is only worth 0.5 WAR.
Didn't that surprise you that
and
it was that little?
Muncie's 2.8, but I think that's more because of the position he's playing.
Right, I agree.
And so,
but Schwarber only a 0.5 B WAR for the season, having 45 home runs and a 120 plus ops. Wow.
Right, but I think
WAR doesn't like him very much.
WAR doesn't like a guy that doesn't really play defense and doesn't and hits for a really low average because
really low average,
right? Sure, he's driving in runs, but you expect him to when he's got 45 homers.
Right.
And you'd think a guy with 45 homers would drive in more runs than 100.
Yeah, he's
like right at 100.
I think it's 100,
Three
103 or something like that. So, but the Phillies are, they're playing well. They're beating up on our Mets this weekend here in Philadelphia, and they've got their wild card all sewn up. So they're
right. I think they're just competing to whether they'll be the first wild card or the second. They're pretty much locked into being the first, basically.
So for teams like them, they're actually even different than the Braves. We'll talk about them as just in the sense of the Phillies will try to set up their pitching rotation, obviously for the playoffs by the end of the week. The Braves have pitching issues with their starters because you mentioned
guys going down.
Yeah, Charlie Morton, you told me today went down.
Yeah, Charlie Morton went to the IL today, and so he's not going to be able to come back.
And I think Max Fried is already on the IL, and I'm not sure when he's coming back.
So that's a blow to their starting pitching.
You bet.
And you have to think of your teams like the Brewers, the Phillies, and the Dodgers, that the Braves look like a much more vulnerable team.
Well, the Dodgers would say, hold my beer, actually, when it comes to starting pitchers getting hurt, because or not being in the lineup for other reasons.
Right,
but they've got their issues, too.
Oh, yeah, but the Dodgers are thinking, okay, the Braves don't look as unassailable as they did when those two guys were in the starting rotation.
I don't know. That's a hitting team. I can't bet against that team.
But they don't have the same depth at starting pitching, which would have made them really difficult to beat in a series.
So let's talk about the NL race since we're on the NL, and we've got the Diamondbacks that are slightly ahead right now of the Marlins and the Reds.
As it is right now, the Diamondbacks and the Cubs would be your second and third wild card. So the question kind of comes down to it:
can they hold on? Right.
But you've got the Marlins that are right there with them, and then you've got the Giants and the Padres and the Reds that are all sort of lurking a little bit more.
The Giants are done to me. So the Padres have been done for a while, and they lost yesterday. But how about what happened to the Reds yesterday on Saturday?
A back-breaking loss, truly.
So you go up 9-0 in the second inning or the third inning, 9-0, and you lose the Pirates scored 13 runs in a row.
Right. They gave up 13 unanswered runs.
And you come back and you score 3 runs, but that's not enough, and you lose 13-12.
Yeah, and that loss might break their spirits.
I think so. I think like that's just like, oh no, we had it in our clutches. So it's going to be tough for the Reds to recover from that. The Reds host the Pirates, obviously, again today, and then they go to the Guardians for 3, and they play the Cardinals for 3 at away both times. But those are two teams.
Those are two beatable
they can win.
teams,
right.
so that they have the benefit of an easy schedule. Meanwhile, the Cubs, they have one game today against the Rockies, which they're loving, but then they have to go play the Braves and then the Brewers to close out the season, and that's a rough way to end the season unless the Brewers just basically aren't playing anyone.
I think the
which
Braves
doesn't really happen.
The Braves, and you can check this. The Braves probably are secure. Are they secure with the best record in the league, or the Dodgers close enough that they could catch them if they had a good week?
If the Dodgers had a good week and the Braves had a bad week, they could catch them.
So that will mean the Braves have something to play for.
Right, at least that during those games, because those games will be to put away and lock in the best record in the National League.
So the Cubs and then finishing with 3 with the Brewers. Now the Brewers have clinched. I don't think the Brewers can change their position at all. So they're going to be arranging their decks for the playoffs.
Right. Well, I think there is a world in which they become the second wild card.
No, they're the division champion.
Well, if they haven't locked up the division, so if they lose,
they have to lose every game, and everybody else got to win every game.
Right,
so
right.
They're the division champion.
It's a weird day. So I think they're locked in. And then I think the other interesting thing is, so you've got the Marlins, who are finishing up their series against the Brewers today, who then play the Mets for 3 and then finish out the season against the Pirates for 3.
Both those series away, but
winnable series for the Marlins. Now, they struggled against the Mets last week. And I think another struggle in Miami. So if they struggle against the Mets in New York, that could really doom them for the season.
Yeah, I really like the way they're fighting. I think Jazz Chisholm had grand slams in consecutive games for the first time in Marlins history, I think, this week, I should say. So and he hasn't really been playing great recently. He's kind of been slumping a little bit. But, man, that team is plucky, and they are fighting hard. And I would not, because of their schedule, I would not bet against them this week because I could see the D-backs actually, falling back.
And then the interesting thing is in the American League, you've got one wild race, and then you've got in the AL West where you've got 3 teams, and then you've got 2 of them in the Mariner Rangers that are going to be duking it out basically this week for the division with the Astros kind of looking in on it. And then you've got the American League East where the Orioles and the Rays are still jockeying for position and winning the division crown and getting that spot.
Right, the other team's the wild card, obviously.
But then you've also got the Blue Jays in that division sort of lurking there, paying attention to what's going on in the American League West because they want to snag one of the wild card spots. And one of the things that what they really need is for one of the Rangers or the Mariners to sweep that series. Because that'll help them by knocking out that other team.
The Mariners are already taking it against the Rangers, and if they lose today, that will be the first half of the sweep because they still have another few games against the Rangers.
Because they need some help too, because they're tied basically with those teams. So you need them to help keep one another down for you if you're the Blue Jays.
So the Mariners finished the Ranger series like we said today, and then they host the Astros, and the Astros have been not doing well in Kansas City this weekend. Wow, what a time for them to blow it.
Kansas City is the hottest team in baseball, weirdly.
I don't
9-1 in their last 10.
And then they host the Rangers to finish the season, the Mariners. So that probably is going to be determining at least a wild card, if not the division.
The Mariners will 100% be involved in the games that decide who's getting the playoff spots out of the AL West.
Right, and there's a scenario here that the Astros don't make it, which I would have thought impossible even 2 weeks ago, if not a week ago.
Especially if they lose today. They've got 3 tough games against the Mariners, and then they got to play 3 tough games against a hungry Diamondbacks team that's also going to be in the race.
Playing for its playoff life.
That could be a great series to close out the season because both of those teams are going to be playing for their lives most likely in that final series.
And not just because our team is out of it, the Mets, and have been for a long time, but I was watching MLB this week, and they went to the quadruple box with all the games that were of import. I think they might have been even more than 4. They can only put 4 up at a time. And boy, was that a blast to watch all these different important games going on at the same time. And this is a week you're going to be able to do that if you get on your screen and kind of watch that multi-view.
And you're going to be there because then there's going to be that, and then the teams that are gearing up for the playoff races because you're going to see teams like the Dodgers and the Braves, like we're talking about, the Brewers. They're all going to be helping kind of line themselves up. You have Kyle Farmer, who's finally guaranteeing Twins baseball victories for this postseason. A team they make it all the time, and then they just get swept.
Yeah, well,
now, they don't have their boogeyman, the Yankees, in the playoffs this year.
Yeah, and the Yankees have played well, and they will factor into the playoff because they play the Diamondbacks tomorrow on Monday now to make up the rainout game today. And the Diamondbacks obviously are hosting are being hosted by the Yankees at the end of the season. So
they're playing the Astros.
The Astros. I'm sorry. I think so. That's the only game. My bad. The Yankees are playing today.
Yeah,
the last impactful game in there.
I don't know who they're playing the last 2 series.
I don't think they have anybody in their actually the Blue Jays host the Yankees for the final 3. So that's where I knew the Yankees.
The Rays are playing the Blue Jays play the
next series is next, right?
Yeah, and then they finish
Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Blue Jays at Yankees.
Yeah.
So that's that's going to be a very important series as well, obviously, because like you said, the Blue Jays, I don't know, I feel like they kind of missed their opportunity this weekend a little bit.
The Yankees are playing for not finishing in last.
Well, they're over 500 now, so
right, but they're playing for not finishing in last behind the Red Sox because that would at least help them this season. It wasn't quite as a disaster as it was when they went all the way from first to last.
Yeah, that's another conversation, I guess, altogether. Is how is it important if you finished? How important it is if
you don't want to finish
4th
last.
or 5th? Yeah, well,
the Mets don't want to finish last behind the plucky Nationals any more than the Yankees want to finish behind the plucky Red Sox.
So, a couple of any good weeks. Let's talk about some of the guys that had great weeks.
You had a couple guys that had really, really impressive weeks. Sonny Gray had a couple huge starts for the Twins that helped them lock in their playoff.
He's pitched very well for them this year.
Mm-hmm. And then we did mention that Acuna got his 40-70 mark this week.
Right.
Which, I mean,
first guy
ever. And I think we'll see more guys with that stolen base total. I think you won't see many guys putting up both of those in the same season anytime soon. But then you even had guys like, Andres Jimenez coming on for the Guardians at the end of this year is an important thing for them because he was so good for them last year. And that team is so hurting for offense that if he's starting to kind of look like the guy he was for them last year, that at least gives them something to be excited about.
Well, it means that they can look to other places to try to fill needs if they think he's going to be able to hack it for them next year.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, obviously, J.D. Martinez had an unbelievable week, hitting 5 home runs, and Ozzie Albies hit 7 this week.
Yeah, and the Braves. So we're going to our next episode is going to be about something that I kind of came up with called total bases per plate appearance as a measure of hitter effectiveness, and we'll talk about teams actually because I got into that. I wrote an article about players, but team wise, the Braves, this year's Braves, and I'm teasing this out ahead of the episode, will finish with the highest total bases per plate appearance average for a team in the history of Major League Baseball.
That's what you're going to get when you have the team filled with guys hitting 30.
They got 9 guys that can do it, right? I mean, that's just amazing. But to be it's the first time I ever looked at this stat, and to find that there's a team this year that's going to have the all-time record, it's amazing. So we'll talk more about that in the next podcast.
Right. Oh, yeah.
Listen in for that one. But that's how good this Braves team is, which is why I think in the playoffs they're a tough out.
We've seen unbelievable, and there's some other offenses that are on that list. Most famously, the 2001 Mariners that were an unbelievable regular season offense that also flamed out in the first round of the playoffs. So regular season offensive success is not always a portent of future postseason success.
There is no doubt about that. And let's talk just for a second, because this week Garrett Cole put in, I think, 1 or 2 starts that solidified him as the hands-down choice for the Cy Young in the American League, right? I think he's got it. But in the National League, I think it's kind of fallen apart. What we thought was sure isn't anymore.
I have no idea who the National League Cy Young is.
Because Gallen tripped and fell. Justin Steele tripped and fell a little bit. It might
go to one
Blake Snell, Strider, maybe. Yeah, so
I'd say it's Snell's to
Zach
lose.
Wheeler, maybe? Out of nowhere?
I think it's Snell's to lose right now.
Yeah,
but if Gallen or Steele has an unbelievable start to win,
Gallen's pitching today, and he's pitching okay so far.
If he pitches again on like Friday or something,
well, they may need him on Friday, and they wouldn't want to pitch him, but they have to.
They might have to, and he has like an unbelievable start to get them to the postseason. That could like push him over the line or something, just because it'll be fresh in everybody's mind.
So it's going to be an amazing week. We should think about doing our wrap-up show. Maybe we'll do it after all the games next Sunday night, because the season will be over.
Right, yeah.
And so that we will be able to talk about the playoffs a little bit.
What the matchups will look like. We'll have a good idea of what's coming down the pipe. We'll even be able to kind of preview some awards and give our thoughts on that. And, I mean, it's been a really exciting season for baseball. So, I mean, I hope all our listeners out there are contact us. Let us know if there's any races that you're particularly interested in seeing, or just what you're excited to see as we get down and sort of lock in all our playoff spots and get ready for some postseason baseball.
I think this is the 4th episode that we've done this week in baseball thing where we added to the weeklies, and I know I'm really enjoying doing them, and we're getting great feedback. I mean, people seem to like this, and we try to do it quick and keep it snappy. If you've got ideas for how we can add something that's not in there,
anything that you thought we should bring up, just let us know.
Let us know. But again, thanks for listening, and tell your friends.